Hi guys, I've got another layout for the Pink Paislee design team today, and this one I based almost entirely upon wanting to use these tags from the Horizon line. They're already embellished, they're already ready to go. I love them and I desperately wanted to use them on a layout, but before I get started I decided to do a little bit of mixed media on this layout, and you'll know I'm no mixed media expert, but I'm going to give it a go. So I have got some just plain white cardstock and I prepped that with some clear gesso because I'm going to do a little bit of watercolor on top. I'm using these liquid watercolors from Pink Fresh Studio, and I just picked out 3 colors based on the colors in the photos that I want to use, as well as some of the tags that I'm going to use. So I've got this kind of blue and a teal color and a really bright pink, and I think I've seen Missy Whitten use this technique before of just using an acrylic block to sort of smush the color on top, and I decided that that would be a good way for me to go since I'm so new to this kind of thing. So I am just gonna wipe off my block in between, but I'm just using each of the 3 colors, adding a bit of color and some water because I don't want them quite as saturated as they are in their fully liquid form, and just kind of smushing it onto the cardboard. You can see me. I had added a little bit of spritz of water to start off with, but obviously that wasn't enough, so I'm adding a little bit more and just kind of letting it run, and then I'm gonna just use my brush to mush some of the areas that weren't quite spreading the way I wanted them to. Before this dries completely, I'm just gonna use the fully saturated form of the liquid watercolors and a paintbrush to just sort of splatter a few droplets on. These sort of spread out because the page is wet, and so once the page dried I did come back and add a little bit more splatters and then let that dried fully, and then I decided before I get too carried away and create too much of a muddy mess on there, I would stop and let it dry. And so now I'm going to carry on with my page. The first thing I'm going to do is do a little bit of hand stitching. So my idea with these tags was to create them into a sort of banner. So I am going to create the strings for my banners to sit on with a little bit of hand stitching. Now I used that alpha guide. I figured that was a perfect way to get a completely perfect semicircle here. So I used that and a really light pencil line over top to create 3 little lines that I'm going to then hand stitch just with some white embroidery floss. I used my punching tool, which is literally just a drawing pin at this point, and a little mat to punch some holes, and then I erased the pencil lines and I can go ahead and hand stitch that. That was a tiny bit boring and I'm not going to make you watch all of it, so I finished the hand stitching and I decided that it wasn't quite, there weren't enough strings for my liking. So you can see on there I did machine stitch a couple of other strings, and I used some metallic pink thread for that. Just picked up some of the pinks in the background, and I really love how that turned out. So I've chosen 2 of the tags and I've got my photo. You can see now where the color scheme came from, and I've just chosen a few of the other papers from the Horizon line that match those colors. So I've got lots of blues and pinks and a few teals, and I'm gonna use my border punch here just to punch, and I do end up punching way too much. I punched this whole strip of paper, but I only use a very small amount of it, but I will go ahead and keep that in my little scrap bin to be used at another point in time. So what I'm going to do here is use this to create a banner out of my photo. I don't want to just stick the photo straight down onto the background. I want it to create a tag for this as well. So I'm going to use this background paper as my base, and that's why I'm going to border punch both sides of it. I just put my photo on top of the strip on my trimmer to make sure that the width of the paper that I was trimming was going to be wide enough. I wasn't sure how much I was going to trim off when I ended up border punching this edge here, and I do want to be able to back my photo with a couple of different papers as well, so I wanted it slightly wider than the photo, but wide enough to add a mat on top. Now I'm going to echo these same pennant shapes that are on the tags that I'm already using, and to do that I'm just going to find the center point of this strip of paper and just mark it with a pencil, and then I'm just using my scissors to cut from one corner to the center and from the other corner back to the center, and that gives me a centered flag shape. It was almost too deep though, so I'm just going to trim a little bit more off it, and I'm using those scallops as a guideline for where to do that too. So now I've got the basic shape of my pennant flag here. I just need to trim off the top. Like I said, I border punched that whole strip of paper and I only need this little bit, so I will keep the rest for another day. So this is the basics of my page. These ready-made tags from the Horizon line do come with strings on them. I'm just going to trim those off because I don't need them. And now I can go ahead and map my photo. And because the paper that I've chosen to do the flag with is quite dark, I'm going to map my photo with this light pink paper just to help it stand out from the background a little. Obviously my photo has got that dark blue in it as well, so it just needs a little bit of contrast to help it pop off the page. I'm going to add one more mat underneath that in this sort of lighter blue. It's the same pattern as the tag on the left there, which it helps to sort of tie it all together. The other tag has this really beautiful floral paper, and I'll end up tying that in a little bit later on, but for now I'm just using that same pattern paper, and that's it. I don't want to go too overboard with this flag. I just want it to keep it simple but to tie all those colors in. So I'm going to adhere it to the page now, but I decided to give it a little bit more dimension and actually mount the photo onto the flag with a bit of foam. I don't have any adhesive foam, so I'm just using some regular craft foam and adding my adhesive to it, and then I can go ahead and stick that onto the background. I decided I wanted to add a little bit more dimension to this banner before I go ahead and stick it onto my page. So I'm adding just a tiny bit of foam, just one strip at the bottom, and then adding my adhesive to the top, and then I can go ahead and stick that down. And what that does is just raise up the bottom a little bit, and if I bend back these corners and some of the side pieces, it just gives a little bit more of an illusion like it's flying in the breeze, which is kind of what I was going for. I'm going to repeat that on both of these little tags as well, adding a small piece of foam at the bottom and then just adhesive straight onto the tag at the top, and then sticking that down, lining up the two corners of the flag with the stitched marks that I've already done, and then I can go ahead and just bend that up a little bit and give it a tiny bit more dimension. Now I did stitch those other two lines at the top of the page, and the reason for that is that I wanted to create a couple more strings of banners. So I'm going to use a flag punch to do this by punching out a bunch of flags from the coordinating papers I have here, and then I'm just going to go ahead and place them on the page and just see what looks best. I end up punching way more than I needed, and I also punched a few different papers that I don't end up using. You can see here I realized the back side of this pink paper also worked really nicely because it has the pink and blue floral on it, and then I use this more painterly sort of looking one, but I don't end up going for it. It's got a little bit too much purple and sort of darker pink in it that doesn't really coordinate with the colors on the page. It's just a slightly different color. So I go ahead and try this other sort of more purpley pink one. It goes nicely with the watercolor that I've picked, painted into the background there, sorry. And again, like most of this is just a case of just playing around, but I'm adding a couple to the string that my three main banners are on, and then I've got a couple on the other two there. So it's just a matter of faffing about and playing around with them. So this is where I can tie in the pattern paper that the tag on the right is made from. I just went and grabbed the 6x8 pattern paper pad from the Horizon line, and it has that same pattern. It's a slightly larger scale, and it also has a little bit of sort of copper foil in it, which is nice, but I can just add a couple of those just to tie in that very dark navy blue that's in there. So now I've got all of the different patterns from the tags from the actual tag pack, and I'm just going to add, there's a few tiny little flags in the chipboard sticker set, and I'm just picking out a couple that are the same colors that I'm using. So I've got a pink one, a blue one, and I do end up adding just a couple of tiny little teal blue ones. While I've got that chipboard sheet out, I realized that the word adventure would probably make a really cute title for this page. The photo is of my sister and Jack, their first time out of the house together. So that was definitely worth celebrating on a page. And the word adventure worked really nicely. So I'm going to add to that with some of these stickers. And I just want to stick to one color. I did try the blue. I wondered about the blue on top of the blue background, but I actually think the pink stands out better. It stands out really nicely. So I'm going to put adventure out as my title and just stick those down on my page. And then I realized that I haven't glued down any of these little flags, so before I go ahead and move anything around too much, I'd best stick those down. There are a couple of banners that hang outside the page, and I've done that purposefully so that it just gives a bit more of the look that these lines of pennants extend past the page. So I'm just gluing them down and then trimming them off. And I have roughed up a couple of the edges on those little banners too, just again to give them a bit more dimension, a bit more of a 3D look. I'm going to add my journaling directly underneath my title, and I'm just rolling some lines to add my journaling with, I'm using a navy blue gel pen for this, and it's a little bit finicky over top of that clear gesso, but it still works nicely. I used a T-square ruler to make sure that my lines were straight, and I'm going to end up having to add another one because my journaling took up a little bit more room than I thought it would. And that's it, that's the page done. I really love how this looks. I'm, obviously not an expert at mixed media, but it really does help to not fuss about with it too much, I think. And I will definitely be trying a few more of these. I think practice makes perfect. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and leave me any questions or comments that you've got down below. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and if you want to keep watching, there's a couple more videos on screen. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Bye guys.